right, let's see if this is on. You hear me? I can hear myself. Good. It's 5 o'clock. We're done. Okay, give me a few minutes. I understand there's like seasonal forecasts coming out. And I'm a real fan of the science behind seasonal forecast. I'm not a big fan on how people use seasonal forecast to talk about the hurricane season. Because here's a question I got for you. What are you going to do differently based upon a seasonal forecast? Are you going to do anything any different if it's above average, average, or below average? Are you going to do anything different? In 2010, the NOAA forecast was being issued. At the same time, we were briefing President Obama. And if you remember 2010, it was forecasted to be an extremely active season. And I can remember the NOAA administrator going on and on and on about how this was, all the signs indicated how active this season was going to be. It pretty much took up all the time of the briefing. And so President Obama, who was short on time, and basically my 15-minute presentation was squeezed into 1 minute, said, "Craig, what are we doing differently to get ready for hurricane season?" Remember what I said, Bill? Nothing. The president kind of stopped, looked at me, and says, "Yeah, right. We get ready no matter what the forecast is." So a seasonal forecast means this. If you get hit, it was a busy season. If you get hit or evacuate, think last year was a quiet season. Hey, where's the guys from Honolulu County? How quiet was it last year for you guys? Ask the governor, the new governor of Saipan, got hit with a typhoon. So seasonal forecast, the science is fascinating. But if you're an emergency manager, one of the things you have to overcome when you talk to local officials, when you talk to the media, when you talk to the public. Hurricane season starts June 1st, goes through November 30th, you get ready. The seasonal forecast just means it's hurricane season. And the second thing I wanted to talk about was evacuation. Now, I've been in this business when we used to use fax machines to get updates, and if you weren't able to get the weather wire, you hoped somebody would fax you the marine forecast so you could take and use that to do your ellipsis. I was one of those first classes that they had at the Hurricane Center, and I was in Inland County, Alachua County, Gainesville, Florida, and they didn't know what to do with me because everything they had designed was for coastal counties, so they gave me Max. And Max had to figure out, well, as an inland county, what do hurricanes mean? That means a lot of rain and wind, but the primary issue, and what we try to teach in these classes, is evacuation. Now, yeah, I tweet, but Twitter doesn't stop bleeding. I've been doing this for a long time. Your biggest challenge, the hardest decision you're going to make, and the one thing that will have the biggest impact on changing the outcome of a hurricane is successfully evacuating as many people as you can from the most vulnerable areas. And there are some places in this nation that are damn near impossible to evacuate, even with the best forecast a hurricane center can give us, because it takes too long, there's too many people, there's not enough roads, there's not enough time, and far too many people live in areas that have not experienced a hurricane who will tell you this: "I have lived here all my life. It is never that bad." There's a whole bunch of folks in Louisiana that were saying that last week. "I lived here all my life. It's never flooded, and their house is underwater." In the 7 years I've been doing this at FEMA, I've been all over this country for a whole bunch of disasters. The most common thing I hear from residents: "I never knew it could be this bad." I'm like, oh, really? Do you know how much money we spend as a nation to identify those hazards? So whether you're being hurricane strong, whether you're focusing on evacuation zones, your biggest challenge is to convince a lot of people in a very short period of time they don't have any other option but to go. Don't wait for another forecast. Don't hope it's going to get better. Don't say my past experiences will guide me, because too often they're going to be wrong. And when you start looking at some of the most vulnerable areas of this nation, the hurricane, the Houston Ship Channel, Houston, Galveston Island area, Orleans Parish and the surrounding parishes, my home state of Florida, whether it's the Panhandle, Tampa Bay, Southwest Florida, the Keys, Southeast Florida, and even Duval, Jacksonville, Florida, who somehow think they don't have a hurricane problem until they have one. Moving to the East Coast, last year we were looking at Norfolk as one of the big challenges of how do you evacuate the Hampton Roads region? And they had not had a hurricane in decades. Yet it's a dense populated area, extremely vulnerable, low-lying. It's going to be, the term catastrophic comes to mind. And even in Sandy, you know, Dr. Rappaport spent a lot of time looking at how people died. And we've looked back at a lot of data. They die more than any other factor from water. And almost half of that is storm surge. So as we go into 2016 hurricane season, are you up to the challenge? And have you done everything you can to prepare your communities to evacuate when it becomes necessary? You know who needs to go, you know where they need to go, and you plan for it. You train and you exercise of doing, but for what can happen. And then the last thing is an observation. If you want to talk about hurricane seasons, I got some years for you. If you can pick up the trend. 1992, Hurricane Andrew. Remember that one? 1996, Hurricane Floyd. Remember that one? Big flooding event in the Carolinas. 2000, pretty quiet. 2004, 4 hurricanes hit the state of Florida. 2008, Hurricane Ike, Texas. 2012, Hurricane Sandy in the Northeast. Any idea what those years have in common?
Presidential election.
Yeah, there's nothing like a presidential election in hurricane season. But as we get ready for the 2016 hurricane season, as FEMA works with our partners at the state and local level, as we take the lessons of the past to prepare for the future, and we look for all the tools to help us communicate, to get people to change behavior, get people to act, it's all going to come down to a very simple process that is extremely complex to execute. And that is getting people to get off their rear ends and go to somewhere safe. I've heard every excuse, I don't have money, don't have a car. Guys, we plan for that. We provide transportation. We work with the states and we do a lot of work. I mean, part of this hurricane course that we do isn't just to be able to understand the forecast. It's really how to apply that to the decision making of who needs to evacuate and when. And if you are still questioning, are you ready? Are our plans for where we need to be? You got a short window. But if you look at hurricanes, wind is not the big killer. It just knocks out a lot of power and roofs. We always talk about all the supplies and stuff you need to have after the hurricane. That's great. But what's going to kill people is going to be water. That's what the data tells us. And if we don't get people to evacuate in time, we cannot change the outcome for them. Once they're evacuated, we're going to have it's a challenge. Your hands are going to be full of everything that goes wrong in hurricanes. Whether it's the power outages, the debris on the road, you know, people that are jammed in the shelters. It's never going to be easy. But the difference is they're survivors, not victims that we're burying. That's the goal of the hurricane program. That's the goal of all the hurricane courses. It isn't to make you a meteorologist. It's to give you the tools to apply the meteorology, the forecast, and the risk to how to plan for and evacuate your communities when hurricanes threaten. To change the outcome So we're dealing with survivors' needs, not victims that we lost. So good luck this hurricane season. This is one of many conferences. This is the National Hurricane Conference. Many of you will have state conferences. Many of you will be going into hurricane exercises as we prepare for this hurricane season. But let's keep one goal in mind. If they don't evacuate, there may not be a second chance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's thank all our afternoon speakers one more time here. And one more bookkeeping thing I needed to do, I've been asked to do. Can I see a show of hands of the people who are attending the Security Summit on Friday? Okay, David, I hope you're back there and can count because I can't see very well. Okay, all right, thank you very much. Hope to see everyone tomorrow morning around 8:30.